And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Davos, we know there's the big housing speech. What else can we anticipate?
There's also going to be some look at the new world order that President Trump is creating. And, a lot of countries that were, whining about tariffs 6 months ago and saying that President Trump was going to harm their economies had pretty good years. And I think it's in part because people recognize that President Trump has made it so that we are the shining city on the hill again. We are the engine of global economic growth because the U.S. is really that strong again.
At its core, final word, Europe was born as a project of peace. And Canada, over the years, over the decades, has served alongside European allies in pursuit of that peace. It's that, in those circumstances, from Vimy to Juno, that the world came to know the value of our strength. But now we're working alongside the European Union to combat climate change, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and to protect, amongst other things, academic and scientific freedoms. In these ways, the world knows the strength of our values. And this partnership, which is in defense and security and economics, really builds those strengths in both our jurisdictions and lives up to our values.
Yesterday when you met with Premier Lee, one of the things you said in the public remarks was this partnership with Canada and China, this new partnership, sets us up well for the new world order. What did you mean by that? What is the new world order?
Well, it's a great question, Brian, because I think the world is still determining what that order is going to be. And let's be clear what we're talking about first and foremost, which is what is going to govern global trade? What is the role of the WTO going to be? How important are bilateral deals such as the one we're developing, plurilateral deals, if I can use that term, Trans-Pacific Partnership, potential linkages between Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU? Where is financial regulation, payment system regulation going to fit into that? All of these aspects, use fancy word, like the architecture, the multilateral system that has been developing these is being eroded, to use a polite term, undercut, use another term. So the question is, what gets built in that place? How much of a patchwork is it? How much is it just on a bilateral basis? Or where do like-minded countries in certain areas? So like-minded countries, just to be clear, doesn't mean you agree on everything. Aspects, for example, on digital trade or agricultural trade, climate finance as another area, to move into areas of geostrategy, geosecurity. You will have different coalitions that are formed. So what this partnership does is in areas, for example, of clean energy, conventional energy, agriculture, as we were just talking about, and financial services, which we've talked less about, but the evolution of the global financial system, the role of the renminbi over time, the evolution of cross-border payments. I know it all sounds very dry, except for your organization, which I think takes an interest in it. These are important elements of how the system is going to work. And look, the expectation is that rather than these being developed necessarily through the IMF, WTO, and other multilateral organizations, it is going to be coalitions that develop them not for the world, but for subsectors of the world.
Canada and Mexico do well, but the problem is we don't need their product. We don't need cars made in Canada. We don't need cars made in Mexico. We want to make them here. And that's what's happening. Everybody's moving here. From Canada, they're coming here.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is in China on a historic 4-day visit, the first by a Canadian leader in nearly a decade, seeking to repair strained ties and reshape Canada's global trade strategy amid growing tensions with the United States. Arriving in Beijing, Carney declared that a new strategic partnership between Canada and China could position both countries for what he called a new world order, arguing that the global system has fundamentally changed since Canada's last high-level visit.
Chairman Zhao Leji, for receiving me, my ministers, and our delegation. This is indeed a very important meeting and the most auspicious start to the new year and to a new era of relations between Canada and China. We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which our relationship has progressed in recent months. This sets the stage for these important discussions on a wide range of issues where we can be strategic partners, from energy to agriculture, to people-to-people ties, to multilateralism, to issues on security. And we believe that the spirit and the substance of these discussions and these agreements will provide great benefit to each of our peoples, but also provide an example to the world of cooperation amidst a time globally of division and disorder.
That remark sparked backlash at home. Conservative MP Blaine Calkins blasted Carney for discussing a new world order with Beijing, accusing the government of cozying up to an authoritarian regime.
Mine is the first visit of a Canadian Prime Minister to China in nearly a decade. The world has changed much since that last visit. And I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
Carney pushed back, clarifying that the world is still defining its future order as traditional multilateral systems erode. He suggested that smaller coalitions of like-minded countries may increasingly replace institutions like the IMF and WTO.
I know that you're talking about China offering stability. There are still, of course, though, concerns in this country about human rights,
Yes.
about freedom of expression. I'm wondering where those fit into your calculations. Are these things that Canada just can't afford to think about because we've got to diversify our markets?
No, we fundamentally stand up for human rights. We stand up for democracy, territorial integrity, rights to self-determination. We take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. That means the following. We do engage with countries. We calibrate that engagement depending on our values and our interests, so that engagement is more narrow when there are those issues. We also have, if you will, a sort of value-based realism to the approach. In other words, we will engage on those issues. We'll engage with coalitions on those issues because that has more influence.